Good morrow, everyone. Welcome to Bite-Sized Literature, Episode 1, which is Hamlet.
Hamlet.
And that's why we're in these very fancy costumes.
It is. I kind of like this thing.
I know,
almost
right?
just want to keep putting it in my closet and wear it to work on Monday. But unfortunately, we have to take it back because they're just rentals.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, but these are nice.
They are nice. Okay, so we're starting a new series, obviously.
Yes.
This is Bite-Sized Literature. Presley's going to read. We'll read things together, and we'll talk about them a little bit. Why did we start with Hamlet?
Why did we start with Hamlet? Well, it was on John Green's reading list,
Yep.
which is, by the way, awesome. I'm
They're all
books
awesome.
from that.
Yeah.
So, we just thought it was sort of a timely thing because Hamlet's definitely a classic. That's kind of hard to say.
There's no doubt. So we started with Hamlet primarily because it was on John's reading list.
And then it was just...
John also has a Crash Course Literature 2-episode thing on it, which we highly recommend that you check out.
Yeah.
We watched one of the adaptations of Hamlet. We watched the Mel Gibson Hamlet,
And then we watched
which I kind of like.
of another one.
Did we?
Yeah, we watched like the first half of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern.
Oh, I thought you finished that.
No,
Oh,
I watched
okay.
like the first bit.
So we need to finish Rosencrantz.
And
And she
there's
watched
Kings.
Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, which is one of my favorite movies of all time, right? Tom Stoppard is one of my favorite playwrights of all time. I love the actors. It's brilliant. If you haven't watched Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, I recommend that you read or watch Hamlet so that you're really familiar with it, and then watch Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, and it's amazing. The language and the idea of watching a play
From a different perspective.
yeah, and the way that it kind of loops in, and then here's
Yeah.
some little scenes with Hamlet in them, like the things where Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are in Hamlet, those scenes are identical to Hamlet, of course.
And
but
then
then
they'll be
when
like
they
fun.
leave, instead of staying with Hamlet, it goes with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern and kind
Yeah.
of shows what's going on.
It's really cool.
That's really neat.
I always love like stories told from a different
Alternative perspective kind of thing. Yeah, it's-
I've read books like where most of the book will be like obviously from the main character.
Yeah.
But then there'll be chapters from like the villain
Oh, right,
or chapters from just some random.
It's so good, and Tom
It's really
Stoppard is such an amazing writer. That his language, it's to watch Shakespeare and then watch Tom Stoppard and see the two. Anyway, this is not a Rosencrantz and Guildenstern review, but it's really good. I did want to start though since this is the first episode of literature, I wanted to talk just a little bit about literature first before we talk about Hamlet specifically, right? I think, and in reading some of the reading lists from Project for Awesome, right, especially Rosianna's books and some of the other ones as well, I think literature gives you like this really amazing ability to get in someone else's head.
Yeah.
Right? And so to understand like what it was like to live in a certain time period or what it's like to live now in a different part of the world that we can't really relate to. Like it's one thing to watch a documentary or like a movie or something and see it. But I think a lot of times when you watch a movie like something like that, you think, oh, what would it be like for me to be in that situation? Because you're seeing something unfold in front of you. But when you read a book about it, they can kind of get in that character's head and talk about what they're thinking. And so it makes you feel like, what is it like to be this person in this situation?
Yeah.
Right? And there's a subtle difference there, but a strong difference, right? And so it kind of goes to the, for me, like the dark matter thing that we talk about a little bit. Like your sum of your experiences is sort of what makes you who you are. And so when you're in a person's head and thinking about, like, you may not like this person or you may not be like this person and this person does terrible things, but when a good piece of writing puts you in that person's head and makes you understand how they got to where they are and why they're making the decisions that they're making, I think it's an amazing thing to sort of open your mind and make you see how someone else's life shaped who they are.
And part of that is why I love villains so much. My favorite character is almost always the villain, but the thing about villains is if it's a good piece of writing, you can see why they're the main
They're
villain.
the hero in their own story, right?
Yeah.
They view themselves as doing the right thing.
That's just so cool that you can do that. And the thing is, a lot of main characters are sort of like, I am the hero, I do all the hero things.
Right.
But the villain actually has so much depth because you have to make it an actually like good writing piece, you have to have the villain have reasons for why they're wanting to like take over the world or whatever. And that just makes villains so good.
Yeah, and like I read, like Rosianna's reading list sort of does this a lot, right? There's some books on her list that you're not going to read for a long time that I have read, right? But one of them is about a guy, it's like self-harm and like the life experiences that led this guy to be sort of a self-harmer, I guess, that makes you sort of understand like the self-worth and the way that he feels in a way that I could not relate to because I haven't had those experiences, but being in his head sort of did that. And then I'm about to finish one right now that was about this woman who gets kidnapped in Haiti and like held for ransom, and like her father doesn't want to pay the ransom because if you pay ransom, it sort of opens the door to her other family members to be kidnapped and what she goes through. And then it does beautifully. One of the things I love is like after she gets out, Like, what is her life like, and how is she trying to find her way back to her life and stuff. And I was like, it's an amazing thing that I never would experience. But reading it through her point of view is not just hearing this story about, oh, this woman got kidnapped and they wouldn't pay the ransom for 14 days, so she kind of got tortured during this time, and then when she got out, she had to kind of find her life back. Like, that's one thing that I can think about, oh, that's really interesting, how would I relate to that? But then reading, like, details of what's going through her head and how, again, her self-worth and how she ties those things together. Like, literature just has this amazing power to open the world. I think travel is one amazing way to go see the world and see other people and meet other people and talk to them. But, like, reading from someone else's point of view is a really amazing thing. And so that's why I think it's important for you to spend a lot of time in literature. And starting now with Hamlet, to think more about the literature and like do a study of what it means and an analysis of it rather than just reading the books, both of which are awesome, right?
I do like this really kind of bad thing where I'll read a book and not focus at all on what, like, the foreshadowing and all the meanings of everything. But as soon as I start writing, I'm like, this means this and this means this and this means this and this.
And a lot of times, one of the things I really love to do is read the book twice. Like, read it once and just read it and just like, I enjoy the story and sort of follow it, and then read it again and start thinking about, like, oh, now I know what happens at the end of the story, so I can see how they're setting up these things that come later. So the second read through a book often gives you a lot of stuff like that. Okay. All right, let's talk about Hamlet.
Yay, Hamlet.
So that's well, not really a tangent. That's the preface for bite-sized literature. That's why we're doing bite-sized literature, right?
First we have a fancy word that I don't know what it means.
Yeah, I don't know. The notes aren't in order, but I can talk about this one a little bit if you want to, right? So there's a word that I wanted to teach you that comes out of this that is malingering. Have you ever heard the word malingering before?
I've heard the word lingering.
I don't think it has anything to do with lingering. So malingering is, maybe it does mal-lingering, like bad lingering, kind of think, because mal means, I don't know, that's beside the point. So malingering means acting insane. Right? Okay. And so a lot of times when someone commits a crime, they will act insane so that they can get away with it, basically, right? They can get found, because you can be found not guilty of a crime because you didn't have malicious, and you were incapable of forming malicious intent. You weren't capable of you didn't do it on purpose, kind of, you were crazy. And so, yeah, malingering means acting insane. And so you sort of know the symptoms of someone who's insane, and so you exhibit those symptoms, but you're doing it intentionally to try and get away with something, right? How does that fit in with Hamlet, you think?
Well, this is so weird to say. Omelet definitely did that.
Oh, yeah.
Omelet. Yeah. I'm just, like, I just keep thinking of food.
So, again, watch John Green's series on Hamlet, where he talks about the original story that Hamlet was sort of based upon, with the main character, Omelet.
Omelet.
Right. All right, yeah, so Omelet did it. So did Hamlet do it?
It's debatable.
It is debatable, right? It is debatable.
That is my answer, yeah. Like, he could have, but then again, I am not at all used to reading
reading a script was kind of different, right? Yeah, sure. Yeah. So it wasn't like what I was just talking about, where a book where you're seeing in someone else's head.
Yeah.
You're not. You have to base on what language he used and what he said and how he acted in different scenes. Like, sometimes he would be around Polonius and he would speak very plainly and clearly, and sometimes he would be around somebody else and he would be more crazy, right? And so there's this, So I think you have to, it's one of the things you have to decide is whether he was malingering or whether he was actually insane.
Yeah.
And that leads to another point that I was thinking about a lot, was one of the key, like, ideas that's explored in Hamlet is called subjectivism. And that means that the world is the way we see it. Yeah. Like, there is no absolute truth, but the way that we see the world influences the way the world really is, right? And the big line in Hamlet that sort of, exemplifies that is when he's talking to Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, and he's saying Denmark is a prison, right? And so Rosencrantz, or Guildenstern, if you've watched Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, or you don't know which is which, says, oh, I don't think it is. And so Hamlet says, well, then it's not for you, because there's nothing good or bad, but thinking makes it so. Right? So the way you think it is the way that it is. I think it's a prison, and so it's a prison for me. You don't think it's a prison, so it's not a prison for you, right? And so that's subjectivism, like what I think is the way that the world kind of is, right? And so it made me start thinking a little bit like maybe he started off malingering, and he was acting insane and sort of thinking like an insane person. And if you take the subjectivism to the next level, he might have sort of gone crazy because he was thinking like a crazy person, and the way that you think defines reality. Like, by the end of the play, maybe he was really crazy. And then, like, there's the whole comparison between his madness and Ophelia's madness, and whether, like, she was almost certainly clearly mad. Like she went mad by the end of the play.
Yeah.
And so did he start out, like he was acting mad, and part of him acting mad made her mad. So again, like the whole thinking makes it so kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
So there's this whole, throughout the whole play, there's this idea about what's going on in your head defines reality. And so if you act crazy long enough, maybe you go crazy. And maybe that's part of what happened to Hamlet. What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's a pretty deep kind of
right?
rabbit hole to kind of go down, but I'm curious. Like, that's part of analysis when you're looking at a piece of work like this. That's something that you would kind of want to think about, right?
I think that could have really easily been what happened. Obviously, Shakespeare is not alive, so we can't ask him.
Yeah, this is true. He may have never been alive. There's debate about whether there was actually anyone named Shakespeare, or whether it was other people that kind of ghost wrote.
This is not the X-Files.
That's a whole different thing.
Not the X-Files.
Right. But so, yeah, I think that it could have been one of the messages, like clearly saying there's nothing good or bad, but thinking makes it so, is talking about subjectivism and talking about what's going on in your mind. And so it certainly could have been saying, if you think you are a certain way, eventually you become that way. Kind of thing. Because people talk about, like, fake it till you make it is a more modern expression of that, right? If you're not happy, smile, like force yourself to smile and act like you're happy, and then sooner or later you'll find out that you're actually happy. You make yourself happy. And so maybe the same thing works, where fake it till you make it works for insanity as well. You can be malingering long enough that you lose touch with reality, and you kind of, by the end of the play, he has actually gone mad, right? Yeah. It's kind of an interesting thought, though.
Yeah.
Do you think that's a valid reading?
Yeah, I think that's a valid reading. I mean, I think almost anything could be a valid reading. Because there's lots of uncertainty in the play. Like, there's lots of things that can be taken in lots of different ways.
That's a really good point, too. Like, I think that, like, John talked about a little bit, and if you read any analysis of it, I think uncertainty is one of the other main themes of the play, right?
Yeah,
Where do you see uncertainty kind of tying in?
I mean...
What is Hamlet uncertain of?
What is Hamlet uncertain of? Well, I mean, generally in the play, or, like, specifically him?
Him in the play.
Him in the play. What is he uncertain of?
Yeah. What is his biggest uncertainty, do you think?
Well, I guess one of his biggest uncertainties is whether Claudius actually killed
That's exactly
old Hamlet.
That's exactly right. Like, in
old Hamlet?
Omelet. I almost called him Ego. In Ego, the breakfast food in Omelet, and in other, like, revenge plays. Like, revenge plays were really popular at this time. People love revenge stories always, right? Almost always, the person who's seeking revenge saw the thing happen, right? And they know for sure from the very beginning, this evil person did this horrible thing, and I saw it with my own eyes. And I'm going to plot my revenge against that person. And maybe there's a little bit of a question here and there about whether, like, is it just you hate this person because they murdered someone, but your plan is to murder them, right? Like, that's a whole, like, ethical conundrum that you get into, and Hamlet certainly is getting into, right? And so there may be that piece in some of those, but this brings the additional uncertainty of, I'm not even sure if he did it. And, like, can I murder someone if I'm not sure that they did this thing that I think they did? And even, like, murdering them at all, even if I was certain, may not be ethical. And if I'm not sure, what if I'm wrong and I'm killing this person for the wrong reasons and stuff?
Yeah.
And so there's this huge, like, lack of action because he doesn't know what's going on.
I totally forgot what book this was in, but it was really cool because, like, the whole book was, this might just be a book that I made up in my head. But someone saw, like, someone get murdered, but then at the end of the book, they kind of figured out that the murder was because the person that, like, I don't know, like, maybe their dad or something got killed. Yeah. But then at the end of the book, they realized that their dad was actually, like, doing the main villain or something in the past, and then he got murdered. But that was actually a good thing.
Like, his murder might have been like, so this is, like, cycle of violence stuff, which also sort of comes out in Hamlet a little bit, too. Like, okay, Hamlet kills Polonius, and that makes Laertes want to kill Hamlet, and, like, so there's all these dual revenge stories going on where, like, Claudius killed Hamlet Sr., Old Hamlet, and so Hamlet wants revenge on Claudius, and Hamlet kills Polonius, and so Laertes wants revenge on, like, all of these revenge. And it's this whole thing about it never ends. And again, it's about this subjectivism, like, your story is what matters, right? And so, like, Claudius's family might not care that Hamlet kills Claudius because he killed old Hamlet. The fact that Hamlet kills Claudius would make them want to kill Hamlet were he not already dead, as is everyone else at the end of the play. But the same thing, like, Hamlet kills Polonius, And it doesn't matter why he killed Polonius. The story that Laertes has is I need to avenge my father, right? And so this just cycle of violence.
Everyone needs to avenge their fathers.
And it happens a lot. Yeah. And so the world just kind of, moves. That's definitely what happens in the world, is that like we try and solve violence with violence a lot of times as a species, and that just makes more violence.
Yeah.
Like this guy killed somebody, so we kill him, and now his friends want to kill us, and then our friends kill those people, and then those people kill. Like, it doesn't stop.
Yeah.
Violence doesn't stop violence. And that's part of the story, too, I think, that's going on here in a really interesting way. Everybody kind of wants to get revenge. What about Gertrude? What uncertainty is there about Gertrude?
Well, there's uncertainty, this is almost always from John Green's, but there's uncertainty whether she's loyal to Claudius or Hamlet.
Right.
And there's uncertainty whether she's actually in love with Claudius and she was just doing it to keep power.
That's an interesting take, too, yeah.
Oh, okay, fancy.
No, I'll read it slightly differently, but yeah, go ahead.
Well, there's just uncertainty where sort of like whether she is loyal to Claudius because she is Claudius's wife, or whether she's loyal to Hamlet.
Right.
And there's like a bit of uncertainty there because she spends she's not in most of the play, but in the time she's in her play, she's mostly with Claudius, and she's mostly she's one of the big factors of getting like Rosencrantz and Guildenstern to start spying on Hamlet to make sure he's okay, which could show that
she cares about both of them.
She cares about Hamlet, but then she cares enough about Claudius to like not really to sort of. Well, I'm trying to Englishing is hard. My brain goes too fast. But she cares enough about Claudius to sort of be with him throughout the whole play, even though she's been like told like, no, this isn't right. You were loyal to old Hamlet.
Right.
I don't know why old Hamlet's up here.
I think fundamentally. So number one, I was going to start this off saying that this is going to be very spoilery, but you've had 400 years to read this play, so that's outside of the spoiler window. But it's too late for that now. But I just said it anyway. I think fundamentally the question with Gertrude, like uncertainty, is was she involved in old Hamlet's death?
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like, he doesn't know. And the ghost of old Hamlet, which also could be in Hamlet's head.
Yeah.
Although other people do see him sometimes. Like, the guards see him at the beginning, right? Yeah. They bring Hamlet out to see him. But then, like, the conversations that he has and the follow-ups, if he's really going crazy, could have just been Hamlet's, like, subconscious talking to him. Although, would he have known how the murder happened? And that's a whole other thing, too, with uncertainty. But... like, the old Hamlet's ghost tells Hamlet to leave Gertrude alone, sort of because she doesn't know about it, right? Mm-hmm. And so this is a thing that is just kind of, in the period, if a king died, there could be a huge power vacuum, right? Mm-hmm. And, like, no one is in power, and suddenly people go to war over who's going to get to be the next king, right? And there could be just bloody battles and even years of war that come out of people trying to be king. And so people could argue that Gertrude married Claudius and made him king to stop all of that from happening, to sort of protect Hamlet, because people would have tried to kill Hamlet because Hamlet was the rightful heir and he could have been king. And so her marriage to Claudius could have been more pragmatic. Yeah, do you know what that means?
Nope.
It means practical.
Okay.
Like, she's just thinking about how she can act to make things work out the best. Yeah. Right? And it's not that she's in love with him or that she conspired to kill old Hamlet and marry Claudius. It's just that after old Hamlet died, she's like, uh-oh, there's trouble. Like, people are going to try and be king. They're going to kill my son because he's the rightful heir, and like all of this stuff. I need to keep. What can I do to keep Hamlet safe and to keep stability in the kingdom? And that is put a king in place immediately. Yeah. And so maybe her marrying Claudius was just that, right? But Hamlet certainly doesn't see it. Young Hamlet doesn't see it that way because he sees his father murdered and stuff, right? So again, like just layers and layers of complexity when you sort of read the simple story. Yeah, so we talked to, so one of the other things that we're going to talk about a little bit, I know we're going to go long, of course, but this idea of like the afterlife and death, and our friend, what's his name?
His name, Yorick.
Yorick.
Yes, that's what's his name.
Yorick. And who was he?
He was the King's Jester.
The King's Jester.
I'm impressive, I know things.
That's
wow.
right. So Hamlet talks a lot about death, right? And like this guy was an example of sort of the decay and what happens to our bodies after we die, which he talks about in a couple of different scenes.
That's not actually Yorick, by the way. That's just plastic.
Well, clearly that's not Yorick. Yeah. Number one, there wasn't a Yorick. Shakespeare made him up.
You said, this is Yorick.
Yeah, Yorick. Our buddy Yorick. Alas, poor Yorick. I knew him, Horatio. So he talks about that. He also talks a lot about spiritually what happens after you die, right? And that his most famous by far soliloquy and speech from Hamlet. Mommy, what's the most famous line from Hamlet? Do you know? Hamlet's speech? No? Okay. So, to be or not to be. It was by far Hamlet's most famous speech, right? To be or not to be, whether it is a nobler action to suffer the slings and arrows. Right? Yeah. So, so that, if you read that clearly and closely, right, what he's talking about is this life kind of sucks. Right? And that we're in this horrible place and I'm suffering these horrible things, and almost everyone lives sort of in some ways a miserable life. And if we knew for sure that we were going to end up in a better place spiritually after this happened, we would all just commit suicide.
Yeah.
Right? That's sort of what he's talking about, right? But there's this horrible uncertainty of we don't really know what happens. Maybe it's worse, maybe there's nothing, maybe we don't know what's going on. And so he sort of has this indecision of I don't want to be alive anymore, but I'm afraid of what comes next, right? And so that you see with Ophelia, and there's a whole thing about whether Ophelia committed suicide or not. So that's, again, uncertainty. We don't know what happened. Like, it's a big theme in Hamlet. But she sort of went through with it, where Hamlet is just sort of known as being indecisive because he can't know the facts, because there's so much uncertainty that he doesn't know what to do and how to act, right? Until it's too late. He sort of acts. And then when he acts, it sort of shows that you don't know enough to act well, and even as much as he scrutinizes over what he should do, he ends up stabbing Polonius through a curtain, doing the wrong thing. Like when he finally decides to act, he does the wrong thing, even though he's analyzed it this much, right? So it's also sort of saying, like, no matter how much you analyze this stuff, you just don't know what's kind of going on in the world. Right? It's just a really beautiful way of telling that story. I don't know if it's beautiful, you're killing people, but it's like the thought process that goes into it, I think is really fantastic. It is very thoughtful, right? There's no doubt about that. So even like he thinks and thinks and thinks, and then suddenly, boom, he acts, and then his action is just rash and not well thought out. And I hear some guy behind the curtain, I'm going to kill him. Right? And then he finally, when he's dying, takes action and takes revenge against the person he wanted to take revenge against all the time. Right? And really, you can sort of say that in the end, when the whole Laertes fight is coming along, all that stuff is happening, he knows now that Claudius tried to kill him through the poisoned sword and through the poisoned wine that killed Gertrude. And like now he's more certain that Claudius was involved in something, and so he kills him before he dies. And so was he killing Claudius because of killing old Hamlet? Or was he killing him because of killing Gertrude and killing Hamlet? And he gets more certain.
Everyone.
Right, everyone's a bloodbath, certainly. But yeah, it's just such an interesting thing about not knowing what's going on in the world.
Yeah.
So this is the first time that you have done sort of a study and watched the John Green video on this. I just read the book. You're right, you read the stories more. Yeah, you pay attention to the stories and the surface of kind of what's happening.
The characters specifically. I love characters so
Character development and things like that. What do you think about like more critical reading like this? Is this something you think you want to pursue more?
Yeah, it's very different. I just think that sort of Hamlet was just kind of odd because it's play format. It's not something
the next thing we do this on will be a book, so you can see in people's heads and stuff. It's just because it was on the reading list and like everything kind of fit together, we thought we'd do Hamlet first.
It was just kind of odd, like actually paying so much attention to meanings, because I make up meanings in my head to make my theories canon.
Yeah,
so
sure.
I'm like, yep, that means that this theory is going to be coming canon.
Well, that's a big thing too. Like when you're in school and you're studying, like in high school, and I was reading a lot of these books, and the teacher is talking about, when the author said this, he meant this. Like I'm always thinking, did he really?
Yeah, did he really?
Has he said that? Has that guy come out and said that's what he meant when he put, or was he just telling a story and we're reading a bunch into it? Because again, we like to do that as human beings.
We did poetry in poetry in our writing class, and they're like, when the sky is blue, they mean this. I'm like, no, they mean the sky is blue.
Right. Yeah, like, that's exactly right. Like, you don't know how much they actually, but it's just, it's well written sort of too, if we can bring our own subjectivism to it and analyze it in terms of our life, right?
Although it's kind of weird because I have friends who like will read my writing and they'll be like, "Oh, I love the meaning." I'm like, "I didn't do that."
Yeah, right. No, I think that happens a lot.
It's cool,
right?
but it's not mine.
I think that happens a lot, but it's still interesting to be able to dive into it and be, oh, that's really cool that's what you got out of that, because you met me halfway. It's sort of called meeting you halfway, right?
Yeah.
The reader brings their own life experiences and subjectivism
Yeah.
to the story and thinks, oh, she must know that when I was 8, this crazy thing happened to me, right? And I'm like, why would I know that, right? Yeah, right. But you bring that to your interpretation, and that's why interpretation is so important. But I do think, for me, it's important to read it once and just enjoy it as a piece of fiction or whatever, and then read it again more critically and sort of dive into it and stuff. Because you don't want to overanalyze the first time you read something, because it can take some of the enjoyment out of it. You enjoy it on a very different level, a more intellectual level when you analyze it. But I think enjoying the story first is probably a great idea.
Yeah, because enjoying the story is definitely one of my favorite, especially enjoying the characters. I don't know why. Like, I pay so much attention to the characters. I think mostly because sometimes I'm just so mad if characters get into a romance for no reason. So I like, you cannot do that. Right. I know that.
Yeah, so let us know what other books we should read and sort of talk about. Would they make good conversations like this and have some analysis so Presley can go out and watch videos? We'll probably do some more of the ones that John has done in his literature course, because I really love the way he thinks about these things, as I love the way he thinks about most things. Yeah. So I think we'll keep this kind of going and tear this off. And I think we'll keep doing more costumes. I kind of like the costumes.
I know.
It's kind of fun.
They're like, well, why not try it out? We'll see what people say. And we're like, yep, this is good.
And we got a new skull out of the deal. We brought Yorick here. And we got, I think this guy's Boney.
Yeah.
Is what we used to call him. We've had him forever.
I know.
But he's a little small for Yorick. A little headhunter kind of funny.
When did we get him?
We may have had him before, because you were tiny. So this is, because we can't.
I was so creative that I named them Boney and Smiley.
Because we can't go through an entire video without going entirely off topic. Presley, when she was very young, we had these two skulls. There's one of the same size that was more plastic. And one of them was Boney and one of them was Smiley. And I don't remember which is which, but I think this is Boney. Presley was very scared of them.
I was scared? I thought I loved them.
Oh, well, no, we'll get there. Okay. So it started out, you were very scared of them. And if we put them out in the room, you wouldn't come in the room, right? You were terrified of them, and you would, like, cry and scream. And then you like, said, I can't remember what it was, but, like, you said something horrible about them.
What did
like, that you
say?
thought they were going to try and do something, or you thought something, they were ugly and scary and something.
And they were going to try and eat me.
Yeah, whatever, right? And so I told you that you hurt their feelings.
Oh, no.
I said, oh, they're really upset and sad because you said this horrible thing about them.
Sad.
Yeah, and you got and you like went and apologized to them, and you're like, I didn't know that you guys were so sensitive and were upset about that. And then from then on, you just loved them. They were like your pets practically. You kept them around. You put them in your room. They were with you all the time after that. It was a really funny story of your sort of childhood.
I know, because I was always like, I don't know like particularly why, but I was always like, I couldn't never hurt anyone's feelings.
Yeah, I know. I totally didn't expect you to go that far into it, because I was like, oh, you hurt their I was just playing, right? I was like, oh, you hurt their feelings. They heard you say that and they're so sad. And you like started crying and you went in there and you're like, I'm so sorry, guys. I didn't mean it. And then you would just carry them around.
Cooper does that too.
Cooper's kind of the same way. Yeah. I mean, you were very, it was pretty cute.
I don't know why.
Because you remember loving them, but you don't remember that you were horrified of them and hated them.
I remember that I loved them so much. And I remember that every time it was Halloween.
That's why you loved them.
I remember that every time it was Halloween, I wouldn't let them go outside because I was afraid they would get stolen.
Yeah, right. Or but that's, again, this goes back to, just so I can tie that a little bit back to Hamlet, that's kind of subjectivism, right? Like, you hated them, and nothing really changed, and then you loved them just because your internal story changed a little bit about them.
Wait, no.
And then they were your favorite thing. Yeah? Cool. Yeah. All right. So, you want...
We're just kidding.
Again, let us know if you want to see more of these at all.
Yeah.
And if you do, so click subscribe button down there and subscribe and watch more of these kinds of things. Video. If you do want to see more, let us know what other sort of works of literature we should take a look at and dive into a little bit. I know this is not an in-depth study, but it's kind of an interesting, fun conversation about it, I think. Yeah. Awesome. Mm-hmm. Anything else?
Not really.
Final thoughts on Hamlet?
Final thoughts on Hamlet. I don't know anything. I don't know. It's that's
read it,
the
watch
point
it.
of the play.
Oh, as another good thing you can tell us, like, this has been made like a million times. Obviously, there's tons of movies about it. There's tons of plays and stuff. Tell us what your favorite presentation of Hamlet has been.
My favorite one's The Lion King.
Yeah, The Lion King's not a bad one.
By the way, it was nothing like I thought. It was not as much like The Lion King as I thought it was.
Yeah. Yeah, there's just themes, high level.
Yeah, I'd always thought, like, I'd heard before I read Hamlet, The Lion King is just Hamlet, but with lions. So I'm like, okay, I'm reading The Lion King. I did not read The Lion King.
Not exactly, right. Yeah, just thematically, there's certainly similarities. Yeah. But yeah, let us know which one's your favorite. Yeah? Yeah. Awesome. All right, we'll get us out of here.
So yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye!
Next time.
Oh, next time. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.